Welcome to Uganda. When Winston Churchill visited more than a century ago, he called it the Pearl of Africa, and we'd soon see why. I never considered it even a remote possibility that Chad and I could fly half across the world to go on the most amazing African safari. But one day, we finally said, why not, and committed to Uganda. There, we could see lions and elephants, but also trek to see some of the world's only mountain gorillas. So, Uganda it was.
All confirmed passengers should now be boarding at gate number D.
Here we are, but it's dark now. It's about 10:30 or a little after. So we'll be seeing Uganda for the first time in darkness. We got a restless night of sleep in a beautiful lodge nearby.
There's our beautiful bed.
All we could think about was the beauty that daylight would soon reveal,
Well, you can't see now because it's dark out.
and the fun that awaited us.
It's our first day in Uganda and we're waking up in Entebbe. Here's Ashleigh. We're about to have breakfast.
Hi.
It's kind of rainy, but maybe it'll clear up.
Our cross-country tour began by meeting our awesome and extremely experienced guide, Big Sam, who made us feel right at home.
This is our guide. This is Big Sam. We're in good hands.
The three of us would travel together for the next 11 days. Before we would reach the wild, we had to venture through the busy capital city, Kampala, which is home to 1.6 million people. Culture was on display everywhere as we passed through the packed streets of cars and people clinging to each other on motorbikes they call boda-bodas.
TIA. That's right. This is Africa.
Fresh livestock and vibrant produce were all around, as well as merchants looking for any potential buyer.
The G-nuts.
Yeah?
We're a big success.
From here, we would travel northwest to a rhino sanctuary, across the Nile to the country's largest park. It's probably the best and biggest park I've ever been to. South to a rainforest to search for wild chimpanzees.
It was not scary. I thought it was going to be really scary.
South across the equator to a lakeside national park that's home to tree-climbing lions.
We've seen so many lions. We saw a leopard up close.
Down to the southwest corner where gorillas roam a mountaintop forest.
We're deep in the jungle, close to the gorillas.
East to a newer park for a nighttime game drive.
The biggest number of zebras in Uganda.
And back across the equator to the airport where we'd started. At Ziwa Rhino Sanctuary, we left the van to encounter the endangered species on foot.
We're walking to see the only rhinos that exist in the wild in Uganda now. These will be the white rhinos.
And it wasn't long before we spotted a mother and 2-month-old baby. Because of civil war and poaching, rhinos actually went extinct in Uganda decades ago. But this sanctuary is slowly working to change that. A collection of just a couple rhinos has now become 30 that rangers guard from harm 24/7. The rhinos didn't seem to mind us at all, but we did have to get out of their way at one point.
We had to get out of the way quickly.
After enjoying some local pineapple, we made our way to Murchison Falls National Park. We rushed for the last ferry spot of the night to cross the River Nile.
On the other side is our safari lodge for tonight, but before we go to it, we're gonna do our first game drive. Maybe see giraffes, elephants. We just heard a hippo in the distance, but first we gotta cross the Nile River.
Once across, the landscape was breathtaking. The African savanna glowed in gold light. Acacia trees and palm trees dotted the horizon. The next day, minutes into our morning game drive, we were suddenly surrounded by lions.
I have counted 8. 8 of them? Yeah, with that cup.
And the pride was on the move. A young one chirped to its mother across the road. Our ranger Emma guessed they'd just eaten. It was a moment I will never forget. Next, we got up close to another savanna icon. Young ones and old ones formed the group called a tower. This is the Rothschild's giraffe.
Are these the only ones in Uganda, or are there other kinds too?
The only one we have.
It's another animal facing extinction. This park is one of their final strongholds on Earth. As we moved on to stretch our legs on the banks of the Nile, Emma spotted and mimicked some quarreling hippos. Hippos can be dangerous, but there is another huge mammal that tends to make guides most uneasy. And there they were, elephants. In this case, a group of young bachelors, and they were on to us. Spread ears is how a feisty elephant shows his dominance. And when they started walking toward us, I got a bit nervous. Big Sam and Emma punched the side of the van to spook them, but they weren't deterred until I slapped the van's roof. Another incredible moment just hours into our tour.
Probably the best and biggest park I've ever been to, but we haven't even seen the falls yet at this point.
Yeah, it's like the savannah of Africa, like what you think when you think Africa.
We'd see more elephants, sunbathing Nile crocodiles, and some beautiful bee-eater birds as we cruised up the Nile to see the park's namesake, Murchison Falls. Churchill, Theodore Roosevelt, and Ernest Hemingway have all been drawn to this natural wonder, which is now under threat of a proposed dam. Back on land, we were on a mission: finish the Safari Big Five. It's a checklist that refers to the 5 animals big game hunters used to consider most dangerous: buffalo, elephant, lion, rhino, and leopard. We'd seen all but the leopard until that night. We got this quick faraway glimpse before the big cat jumped down and disappeared in the grass. Little did we know, our good luck was just getting started. The road to the rainforest was a long one. There were humble villages, smiling faces and waving children, and lush tea plantations. The next day, we'd hike to see some of our closest living relatives, but after our long drive, it was time to relax at our next lodge.
Tarako treetops.
It's one of the nicest rooms we've had so far, if not the nicest. We've heard a lot of birds so far, different from where we were before. I mean, I didn't really hear anything then, did you?
Nope. This morning is all about chimp trekking.
And I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little nervous. I'm kind of scared, just because of the way we've seen videos of them being very loud and kind of hectic.
We set out for Chibale National Park, the primate capital of the world and home to some of the last wild chimpanzees on Earth. On the way into the park, we spotted one of the world's deadliest snakes quickly slithering across the road.
Is that a black mamba? Yeah. Oh, wow.
Inside the park, we took to the trail, and the walk seemed more like a sprint. The chimps were constantly moving, so we quickly followed our ranger for a mile or so to find them. We knew we were close when we spotted fresh knuckle prints in the mud. And then, there they were.
You see it? Oh my God.
Some of the apes rested in the tall trees above, but one 8-year-old was closer to the ground.
There's a chimp. A little one. Right there.
There he is. We followed him down a narrow trail for just a moment before he left us. But not before Chad got some nice shots.
Every night, every chimp will make a nest. Then in a day, chimps can eat around 5 to 6 kilograms of food. Chimps are feeding on fruits, the leaves, dead wood, termites, soil. They hunt other monkeys.
And apparently, my initial fear was a little bit justified.
When different communities meet, they fight to death. When they're fighting, they use tools like logs hitting each other. When you are with chimps, you may think that they are so friendly, especially these habituated ones. But when they go for fights, these guys are always aggressive.
Luckily, no fights this morning. That afternoon, we looked for more primates at a nearby swamp, but not before tour guide Mary immersed us in the local village, Bigodi.
Everything is so green.
Yes, that means we are good in conserving the environment.
We met the neighbor who's famous for making banana beer and gin. Coffee is another important drink. The beans grew all around the path we walked. Nearby, a young girl made us a cup of Robusta coffee from start to finish.
Not very good.
Doing good.
You can smell it.
Inside the next hut, Bigodi's medicine man, who told us about his peculiar elixirs to cure common illnesses there like malaria.
He learned this medicine when he was having 10 years. but this time he has 80 years, meaning that 70 years of experience.
Next, a lesson in African basket weaving from 3 pros.
How old were they when they learned how to do this?
13 years.
I even got the chance to help.
I don't think I'm very good.
In the nearby swamp, we saw the rare red colobus monkeys which plucked leaves from the top of eucalyptus trees.
Look at the baby up there.
Oh yeah, he's by himself.
He's by himself. Ooh, don't fall, little baby. Ooh, makes me nervous for him.
We also caught glimpses of a red-tailed monkey. The wildlife was great, but meeting such kind, welcoming people was even better. Mary herself was one of the friendliest people I've ever met. The next day, we left the rainforest and passed through villages where a Ugandan delicacy is grown. Matoke is kind of like a starchy green banana that's usually steamed and then sometimes mashed. Next stop, Queen Elizabeth National Park and the beautiful cottage where we'd stay 2 nights.
Hello.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm good. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Life. Life, we are treating it.
Great. You're most welcome to Hamba Lakeside Safari Lodge.
Thank you for having us.
All right. How was your journey?
It was great.
Oh, great. You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
Ehamba Safari Lodge sits on Lake George just outside the park, and our lakeside cottage was perfection.
What do you think?
I love it. What did he say? These are for the pool?
Mm-hmm.
I think we're gonna go to lunch in about an hour or so. That's plenty of time to take a bath or go to the pool, get ourselves together for a game drive at 4:30. So here it is.
But maybe the lodge's coolest feature was its noisy neighbors.
I hope we see a hippo out of water, or at least later tonight during our stay, because
Yeah, we could see that
we
outside
could
of our
hear
cottage.
them just outside of our cottage, because our cottage backs up to the lake, and it was so cool to hear them kind of groaning, and you could even hear them breathing. They seemed pretty close.
A gentle rain fell as we embarked for a game drive in the park named for its most famous visitor.
So this is where the name Queen Elizabeth National Park derived from. Yeah, that's hut there.
The Queen admired this special place from this very hut back in 1954 when the park was named for her.
Smile.
Moments later, we drove into the grass and parked just 10 feet away from 3 lions. I couldn't believe how close we were to the wild lions. But just beyond their resting spot, another, more elusive cat was hiding. A friend of Big Sam tipped him off about a leopard in a tree.
It's a young leopard.
Really skinny, see, it's so small.
Right in that cactus tree laying right there. It's amazing.
We must have spent hours watching the cautious cat.
They have a lifespan of 21 years or 22 years. It's an animal which is solitary. When you see them too, it has young ones or it is mating.
Well, Queen Elizabeth National Park, what do you think?
It did not disappoint.
We've seen so many lions. We saw a leopard up close, saw an elephant, we saw water buffalo, even saw a black mamba. Next up, we go to the Kazinga Channel.
There, on our second day in the park, a river cruise finally got us closer to hippos, which were everywhere, even a tiny baby. And we finally got insanely close to an elephant, too. The big creature so majestically ate a mesh of grass and roots from the channel. And minutes later, birds fluttered all around him as he strolled down the beach. It was magical. And so was the dinner on our last night at our favorite lodge, fresh caught tilapia followed by a banana fritter. Before dawn, we embarked to a far corner of the park called Ashleigh, a corner we almost didn't get to. Rains caused the already rough roads to pool with mud so thick, it had already claimed a couple cars and nearly did another.
Oh, goodness.
Oh no.
Guys are crazy. Okay. My turn. Play along.
But Big Sam is no rookie when it comes to this sort of driving.
Yeah. TIA.
TIA.
I held my breath.
Yeah, you have to hold it. When I saw the other colleague going, I knew I would pass it.
This road looks so beautiful after going through that.
A short time later, we'd make it to Ashleigh, one of two places in the world where lions climb trees. First, we stopped by where we'd stay the night and were greeted by a friendly committee of staff. Just like the last lodge, we were the only guests.
This is our new place for just a night. It's a cottage.
On the way here, we saw elephants. We saw some of the black and white colobus monkeys, which I think are my favorite. They're so cool.
Nile monitor. We saw that.
Yeah, Nile
A
monitor.
lizard that Chad wanted to see. And more baboons, which are my favorite, I think. I think I like baboons more than I like any of the other monkeys.
And there are wild baboons and there are begging baboons, as they call them. We ran into one of the begging ones in the middle of the road. We stopped and he stood up on his hind legs asking for food. Didn't give him any though. Very beautiful area. It's just so rich with life everywhere you look. There are butterflies or insects or monkeys or birds. It's just everywhere here.
Every place where we've been has had a different feel. This is more like out in the wilderness where we are now. It's like more lush, really green, a lot of vegetation, and more trees.
Some black and white colobus monkeys swung in some off our roof.
There he is. He's looking down at me.
And sometimes the monkeys and baboons can be pests, as we learned when the lodge's chef Ambrose gave us a tour of his garden and compost pit.
What do you like to eat most in this one? Basil?
Basil.
And Chef Ambrose remembered that. But then it was time for what ended up being the climax of our trip when we set out to spot those famous tree-climbing lions. We searched for hours and spotted vervet monkeys, a long-crested eagle, Topi antelope, Uganda's national bird, the gray-crowned crane, and even a big bull elephant that blocked the road.
Lonely elephants are not friendly.
But no tree-climbing lions, and I became disappointed, impatient. Moments before giving up, it happened. Our ranger so calmly spotted a lone male lion in a fig tree. Jacob, as he's called, was the most perfect prototype of a lion you could hope to see. We were in awe as he stood on a branch and looked out at us. And Chad fired away.
So you think he's scanning for food right now?
The best time to go and hunt. It looks hungry.
It does.
What luck after so much persistence. There are only about 21 lions here that climb like this, and no one really knows why. We were so content, but that next morning we'd head out for another epic adventure, the one that brought us to Uganda in the first place.
Hi.
Hello.
In the southwest, where Uganda meets Rwanda and the Congo, is the world's only home to mountain gorillas. Before we get our chance to see them up close, we pass through a part of the country called the Switzerland of Africa. And it was easy to see why. Fertile hills terraced with family farms neighbored by deep lakes.
Hello.
That afternoon, we'd arrive at our lakeside lodge where, yet again, another friendly staff greeted us.
This is Lake Malehe, where we'll be staying for 2 nights. The country's so different here. It's like volcanoes, volcanic soil, very mountainous. Where we came from, it was not that. It just changes every day, a new environment.
We probably should have relaxed before what was going to be a grueling hike to the gorillas the next morning. But we were too eager to see life outside the lodge's gates. We joined a couple tour guides for a community walk.
All right, smile.
In the same way we stared at elephants and lions in previous days, that's how the locals stared at us. That's not to say they weren't friendly, the opposite. One of Chad's favorite memories happened here, where a group of kids were playing jump rope until they saw him taking pictures and wanted to see those pictures. A language barrier, culture gap, and different skin colors didn't stop us from connecting there on that hilltop. And by the way, we had no idea this community walk would take us straight up a steep hill so tall we could see for miles. But it proved to be good practice for what we'd do just hours later.
Good morning. It's like 5 a.m. right now. We had to be up very early because today is the day we're going to do a gorilla trek here in Uganda in Bwindi Impenetrable National Forest.
And it's Chad's birthday.
Yeah, it's that too, but that's secondary. Could be a long hike, could be a couple hours, could be 8 hours.
It could be a good workout.
Yeah, it's a mountain, and they call it impenetrable for a reason because it's very thick. The way we understand it, the guides will have to use machetes to cut a path. We have gardening gloves ready for whatever comes our way. Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah.
Are you scared?
We'll see how it goes. I'm not as scared as I thought I would be. I'm more on the excited side.
Me too.
We drove up winding mountain roads through the early morning mist. We were anxious about the strenuous hike ahead, but Big Sam's jokes relaxed our nerves. Mzungu's in the mist, he laughed. Mzungu's is the friendly term they use for white people. The next target of his humor, the armed ranger outside the park gate.
How are you?
Yes, boss.
How are you?
My girl.
What is the use of a gun when we are selling gorillas?
There's a vegan.
Yes.
You don't know it.
I don't know. To kill people.
To shoot Mzungus.
To shoot
Bad Mzungus.
Can you lift my people up? They are unable to walk.
We have stretchers, why not?
Bring one.
German. Not true.
Good job. They are unable
we
to
know
walk.
him. He's always kidding.
This man needs a stretcher.
Not now. I'll be back.
Speaking of stretchers, at orientation, the ranger warned visitors that a stretcher, or African helicopter as they call it, is an option for those who can't make it to the top or back. But it comes at a price.
Because the minimum payment for that is always $300.
Chad and I were matched with our tour guide Felix.
We are going to meet escorts already in the starting point. They went early in the morning to find the family for us, and when they find, they communicate to me. Oh, may I confirm that we all have enough drinking water?
Yes, sir.
We do.
Mm-hmm.
Packed lunch?
Packed lunch.
Yes.
Rain gears?
Rain gear.
Somehow, no other tourists were paired with us. It would be a private tour, a rare privilege.
Well, here we go. We're about to start tracking.
Big Sam drove us as far up the mountain as the van could reach.
Hey. Gorillas now.
That's right. The name of the group again was the Muchunguzi, which means savior.
That was our group name and the name of the silverback gorilla we'd track. I'm really excited.
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Our trek began straight up a steep mountain path with Felix and other rangers into thick woods where some forest elephants had passed. Thank goodness we hired a porter to carry our bag and help me through the trickier spots. Chad lost his footing a couple times in the slippery mud. Finally, after 2 hours of hiking and hacking through the thick brush, we were close, the moment we came to Uganda for.
Where are we?
We're deep in the jungle, close to the gorillas. We could just hear one of them growl, tracking the gorillas. And they found the family.
The next few steps were not graceful. All of a sudden, we were falling through a web of vines, stepping down from a steep slope, just trusting ground and the gorillas were somewhere below. And suddenly, there he was, and our guides nudged us toward the dominant gorilla,
200 kilograms. Silverback.
who grunted as he ate.
They said that means it tastes good.
So what is his name right there?
It's called Muchunguzi. Means savior.
That was easy.
These mountain gorillas are endangered, but are proving a conservation success story. Their numbers are growing, partly because tours like this help fund their protection.
This is how close we are to the silverback.
I felt vulnerable standing within just feet of Mchunguzi. But the big silverback didn't seem to mind, and neither did our guides. Some of his children got close to us too. The hour we had with them was the fastest one I can remember. Lunch on the way back wasn't so glamorous, but dinner back at that lodge that night was. And it included a surprise for Chad, thanks to Big Sam and the lodge manager, Emmanuel.
Happy birthday, dear Mills. Happy birthday to you. Hey.
Beautiful.
The next morning, we said goodbye to this stunning landscape, but the trip wasn't over yet. Our final stop took us northeast for another unique experience.
Oh, wow.
But on the way, Big Sam needed to do some shopping. This is fast food in Uganda.
He's buying some groceries. We are from the United States.
And you have to bring your A game.
I'm okay, but thank you though.
Or else you might end up buying something
How are you guys?
you didn't want.
I don't want cabbage, this guy.
He's selling you a cabbage.
Sagara.
You said
Toda mukungu zako. Wait.
You can wave if you'd like. There you go.
One guy said, let me in.
I didn't need it. Don't want.
Did you get what you needed?
Yeah, I wanted carrots, but the guy is begging me badly. Take the cabbage.
All right, round two.
Nze manyi buli kaseera babeera baba Libya side yeeyo wansi. Ngandaba. Nze mbamanyi.
We had a big breakfast, so we're full.
You notice this time my window shut. Last time the little boy begged me to buy peas and I don't have anything to do with peas.
They get the rubbish. The good one is on top and the rubbish down. So they just pour.
So much fresh produce everywhere we went, and the pineapples, mangoes, and watermelons were the sweetest and best I've tasted. As we approached Lake Maburo National Park, we spotted what sets this park apart from the other ones where we'd visited: zebras. They were everywhere.
Who is there?
On our final night in Uganda, we'd go on a nighttime game drive.
Welcome to your room.
Thank you.
Home sweet home.
So we checked into our final lodge and relaxed until the sun was setting. When it was time for our final game drive, we met William.
Impalas, they are the most favorite when it comes to predators. They have several black markings when you check on the berms, like this female, which is nearby the small tree. See
Yes.
that?
Mhm.
Yeah, it has like an M sign on the berm. You see that?
Yes.
That's a trademark of McDonald's. These guys advertise for McDonald's.
He helped spotlight wildlife while Big Sam drove. We saw warthogs, mongoose, hippos, and plenty of zebra.
And the biggest number of zebras in Uganda is here.
But it's what we saw last that proved to be another highlight of the trip. A mother leopard and her young cub, a very rare sight. When it looked like they were about to spook, Big Sam flipped the engine off and William flicked off the spotlight. 30 seconds later, He flipped the light back on and the beautiful creatures walked right by the van, looking up at Chad and me with those piercing eyes.
The leopard was really hunting, looking for the animals. Oh, we've been seeing our food around here. Where are they? Then you see mother and the cow. So questions were going on. Mom, I'm not seeing anything. Don't worry, we can't.
Keep on going, right?
Oh, there's a car. Are we going together? Yeah, don't mind. We have to go. We'll get. So they're also wondering where the animals are, so they keep on searching for them.
The next morning, we met up with William again, this time for a walk through the park.
We will try to see how close we can get to them.
Is it eating?
Yeah, let's try like this.
He helped us get super close to one of the biggest and rarest antelope.
I really need us to get that shop open.
The common eland. He also showed us where warthogs burrow.
I just thought they lived in a bush or something like that.
No, they always enter in these burrows.
And help us creep close to a family of zebra, which included a tiny foal.
So when they're standing, it helps them to camouflage. She was asking about them, but it is they are standing with the mother, and that's how they protect them from predators. So the predators will see, they'll look at, they're seeing only adult zebras. By the time they come to realize there are fowls around them, when it is too late for them again to concentrate.
Back in the van, we started our journey back to the airport, but made one more pit stop at 0 degrees latitude, where I couldn't help but jump from the northern hemisphere to the southern. We also got to see
Okay, so right now we are north of the equator.
how water forms a clockwise vortex in the north and a counterclockwise one in the south. And on the equator, not much of a vortex at all. When we said goodbye to Big Sam just hours later, it was tough. It was time to leave our new friend in the country he'd so passionately shown us. It's a country so rich with beauty. Green forests and red fertile earth. Breathtaking vistas. And creatures that mesmerize. But it's Uganda's culture that's richest. As Big Sam says, Uganda is gold. And we can't wait to return.